Hello, everyone. Welcome to Prosarium.net. Prosarium.net is an initiative to create positive representation for African women in games. We're doing this by documenting 1,000 African women who have a role in games, from hobbyists to game developers to esports professionals and more. You can support us on Patreon for exclusive content. And now, let's get to today's video. By the way, I'm sorry, but I just have to say I love your headphones. I want some of them. Hi, everyone. Welcome to a Prosarium.net interview. And we're here with Sunny Dube from South Africa, but in Canada. Hi, Sunny. How are you doing?
I'm doing all right. How are you doing today?
Doing great, great. Before I ask any other questions, would you be able to tell us what you do?
Well, right now I am both a producer and a student. I work, part-time-ish as a producer at Outerloop Games. So generally, I enjoy my job, and generally it's just about a lot of planning and, talking to people and, making sure that everything is moving along nicely. And then I also just do some, general design work and general, level design sometimes. So it's been pretty fun doing all of that.
And how did you actually get into game development?
So it's kind of an interesting story. So essentially, when I was in grade 11, I was like, I'm going to go into astrophysics or something like that. And then my physics, no, it was my chemistry teacher, just kind of like really did my head in, and I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. I can't deal with people like this all the time. At the same time, I was enrolled in IT, and we've got all our little IT projects that we do over the years. And I just started making games in IT. Like, I think one of the first ones I created like a little thing in Java where you had to listen to the last second of a song and then had to like select what song it was. So it was kind of like a multiple choice game based on the last like second of a song, and that was cool. And I think we also did a little bit of work in Scratch, which also kind of got me into it. And then from there, when I was kind of like looking to do a degree, I was like looking around, and I remember that we had one of those university fairs, and there was ladies like, oh, you might be interested in game design. It was one of these schools based in Vancouver, but I actually didn't apply there. I applied at a bunch of different places, and then that's how I kind of slowly transitioned into it, kind of from like wanting to do astrophysics to ending up in game development. That is a big transition, actually, but I'm glad you are where you are, because it sounds like you're doing really amazing work. How do you balance this? How do you balance being a student and also working as a producer and doing all the other stuff you do? I think part of the balance comes from the studio that I work for, because they're very, very flexible with just like kind of like my hours, and everyone there is like very understanding, and they're all understanding of the situation. But in addition to that, it's kind of about knowing your limits as a person, not being afraid to ask for help. So when I started back in May, it was kind of like the end of the school year, and usually we have a lot of big projects that are due, especially this year because we're preparing to do our final games in fourth year. So they were giving us a bit of longer projects. So it was just about being like, okay, I'm not so sure if I can come in today, just because we had to go ahead and finish the end of this specific game project back in school, and they're very understanding about that. And then I just do a couple extra hours, maybe on like a Saturday. It's not required, but I just do it till I can catch up with everything. For people who might not understand, what exactly does a producer do? So part of the job of a producer is to kind of monitor the progress of a game on a day-to-day basis. So specifically what I do is I do a lot of task tracking and task assignment. So we have Monday meetings in which everybody talks about what they're planning on working on this week. And then from there, I create a couple of tasks, and then I just follow those tasks throughout the week by watching what's being checked in on the source control. I'll see that, oh, this person has done this, it's been checked in on the source control, so I know that this task is a certain percentage done. And then usually people will check off their own tasks. Sometimes I'll just notice that, oh, this has been done a while ago, and I'll check it off, and then I kind of just shuffle things around. And then I kind of, at the end of the week, see how far we've gotten, depending on if we had a specific goal set for the week, or if we're just kind of going through like a normal development period, what everybody finished.
That sounds like similar to project management, is it?
Yeah, it's similar to project management, which is kind of funny because my dad is a project manager for civil engineering. So
Oh, cool. So you can relate to that a little bit. And how did your parents feel about you pursuing game design?
it's kind of, again, a funny story because my mom was like, oh, that's cool, that's nice, and everyone was like, oh yeah, there's probably a lot of money in games, so enjoy that. And then I remember after my first year, because I had also applied for a computer sciences degree in New York, but I decided not to go for that one. I decided to actually do a direct game design degree. It was a computer sciences degree, and then I would have specialized in game programming afterwards. And my dad thought after my first year in university that I was doing the computer sciences degree. Then I had to tell him that no, I'm just doing a Bachelor of Art, and he was like, oh, okay. It was like a brief moment of shock, and then he just accepted it. So my parents are completely happy with my choice.
Oh, that's nice. That's very nice that they're supportive of you. It's not the usual story on the continent, I can say that. How long have you been away from South Africa, and when do you think you'll be back next?
Well, I've been away for about a year now. I came back into Canada August 29th of last year, when they had a few flights open, a few of these secret under the radar flights, because the South African border was still closed at that point. And I usually come back every year, and I usually, the thing is, I usually come back every year, and this year I wasn't able to come back just because of the whole COVID situation, because I would have gotten stuck on either side. Otherwise, I could have gotten stuck here in Canada, just with their border restrictions. If they had decided to close everything and stop flights, I would not have been able to fly home, and then we spent all that money on flights. So I would have gotten stuck at home and not been able to come back to do my classes. But I do intend to come back a lot, because I'm one of those people who will always have my heart in Africa, and in South Africa specifically, is I believe there's a lot of potential in the country. And I believe that the games industry there will only continue to grow, and I want to be a part of that in any way that I can. So I'll probably be back next year when everything is a little bit more settled, and I'm looking forward to it.
I'm also looking forward to seeing you here and actually meeting you in person, because the work you do sounds so amazing. Speaking of South Africa and Africa in general, if you had all the money and resources, what would you do for the game development industry in Africa and South Africa?
To put it simply, I think I'd just make sure that people get paid, because even in North American game development, people aren't getting paid enough. And in Africa specifically, I'm pretty sure that people aren't getting paid what they're supposed to be. So I would make sure that money is invested in all of these new and up and coming studios, so that they have the resources to make the games that they need to, and that they're able to pay people as much as they can for the high quality of their work. And that everyone is able to, continue living, and this doesn't become a thing where you're kind of like a starving artist. I want people to be thriving artists, not starving artists. So I think that's what I would do. And I'd open probably a program where if people wanted to start a studio, they could apply for a grant, and they could start their studio and make a game and be able to publish it and have everyone the world over enjoy.
I can tell you that would make a huge difference, because yes, a lot of people are in kind of starving artists, and exploring game development, their part-time. I would also love to see that. I would also love to see people getting paid, and people being able to pursue game development, without worrying about, um, jobs and whatever, like paying jobs. Um, yeah. So, my next question, which is sort of related to this, is if you were president of, let's see, the world, I don't know, what would you implement? What infrastructure or what policies or anything would you implement to improve game development?
I think that it's a couple of steps that need to be thought about. One thing that I kind of really enjoy about living in Canada is that game studios can actually apply from grants from their provincial governments in order to create games. So I think I would have a similar system, but like a cool worldwide one, in which people could, apply for grants and then maybe find other professionals that they need in order to create a project or continue a project. Like, let's say that there's a studio that doesn't have an animator, then through this program you'll be able to find somebody who knows how to animate pretty well. And because everybody is within a system, there's no fear of again, like people not being paid or anything. Then another thing I think I would do is kind of regulate it a little bit, if that makes sense, just because of all of this stuff that's been happening in terms of like the discrimination lawsuits and all the sexism and stuff. I think that if there were to be a government body that was in charge of game development, I think that I would lead them to kind of make sure that everybody is being treated fairly, everybody is able to have their opinion heard, everybody is being paid fairly, everybody's contribution matters, so that we don't run into these problems where there are people abusing the systems within these companies.
Definitely very relevant right now with the current lawsuits that are happening. So yeah, you know what? I love that you mentioned that because it keeps happening over and over again, and we need to see a change in that. So what would you expect to see from the game development industry in Africa and South Africa within the next 5 years?
Within the next 5 years, I do think that we will probably have a kind of like indie darling hit, like, all these indie games that go wild and they sell millions of copies. I think that's coming very, very soon for us. And when that happens, I think we'll really be able to call attention from our governments that, listen, this is a very important thing that's happening. If you could, nurture this part of the economy and this part of our culture, that would be really important. And it's also a good way to bring in a lot of international attention, because I still find it, and I always laugh about this, how we only have one Comic-Con that the whole of Africa has to share. And I feel like that comes from people not understanding that, we care about these kind of things in Africa, and, we need to be taken seriously in it. So I think in the next 5 years, we're going to find our indie darling. And from that, the industry will continue to grow.
Yeah, I'm excited to see that too. And also, just like we have to share one Comic-Con, it's kind of like that for a games type event, a games conference. We kind of have to share one games conference as well. I would like to take the questions to women in games. So, what do you think women can learn from the games industry?
I think one thing that women can learn from the games industry is how to enjoy your job. Because I feel like it's one of those industries, I mean, especially from what I've seen in like indie development, that you can physically see your contributions taking place. So everything you do is kind of towards an end goal, and it doesn't really end up feeling tedious because kind of everything is different and everything feels meaningful. Even if you're just kind of like placing the little trees in the background that nobody's really ever gonna pay attention to, it still feels like you're helping bring this thing to life. And it really causes, at least for me, like a sense of pride. So I think that women can learn like pride in their work. They can learn how to have fun while they work. They can learn how to, and it also fosters an environment in which you feel that your opinion matters. So I feel like it's also an opportunity to learn how to speak up for your creative decisions and your well-being and like general decisions.
And kind of following up on that, what do you think we can do? What do you think the games industry can do to make spaces more welcoming for women?
I think part of making spaces more welcoming for women is listening to the women who are already there. Because there are, and I think think people forget this, that there are like quite a few women who work in gaming already, and they are the ones who are going through all these issues that are described in these lawsuits. And in order for us to welcome more women into the space, the women who are already existing within that space need to be respected, they need to be listened to, and the people who are abusing the systems within these companies need to be removed. Because how can the space ever be comfortable and welcoming if there are people who are still there, who are still exploiting the system? I feel like just based on what I've been reading in this lawsuit, the other thing that we need to pay attention to is women's issues in general. Because a lot of these companies are then like, oh, we don't want to put a woman in a higher position because what if she gets pregnant? She won't care about this job anymore. And those kind of attitudes need to be rooted out and removed in order for women to thrive within this industry.
And also, they work similarly in the tech industry. So, yeah, we need to get all that stuff like out there. Kind of related to that, is there anything you think we can do in Africa and South Africa? If not the same thing, do you think there's anything we can do to encourage more women to be a part of the game development industry?
I think it kind of starts at like the kind of high school level, because it's not something that's openly talked about as like a career path, because generally the whole thing is, oh, become like a doctor, that everybody's parent is like, oh, become a doctor. So I think we need to start at the phase of kind of like career advisement, of being like, oh, there's an interesting thing called game development that you might be interested in, for girls who have an interest in science. And that's the other thing, fostering a general interest in STEM and in programming, and just even in art for women, and giving them the opportunity to pursue these things, whether it be through IT classes or like an extracurricular program in which they are able to make their own games and explore the medium and explore game development.
And it's something which I hope to see in the future. I hope that it's something I can be a part of. I really want to see that kind of stuff happening. And do you have any specific advice, or any advice in general, for anyone who's really young and watching this?
I would say that don't listen to what other people think. Is kind of like my first piece of advice, because when I was just kind of starting to get into games, people who tell you that, oh, the games you play aren't real games, don't listen to them. That's not true. Every game you play is a real game, and every game you make is a real game. So don't listen to people who want to put you down, and just always be prepared to stand up for your creative decisions, and to basically just have fun with what you do and the people you interact with.
And out of curiosity, what games were those? What games were you playing, and what kind of games do you like?
So I kind of like back in the very, very beginning, I used to play like those dress-up games on the on the Nintendo DS, like the original like chunky Nintendo DS. Like I think I used to play this game called Charm Girls Club. It was kind of horrible. It was kind of just a little bit of shovelware, like admittedly, but like I really enjoyed it. All those like girls dress-up games on the internet. Everyone is like, oh, that's not a real game. And even when I started getting into like, even like later in life, when I started getting into gaming, I kind of started playing Osu, which is just kind of like a rhythm button clicking game, and they've got championships and everything. But I had like a bunch of male friends who were like, oh, that's not a real game. And I'm like, listen, it is a real game, and I'm like ranked number 700 in South Africa out of 10,000 people. So I know that this is a real game. And then, from there, I kind of just got into like the more traditional FPSs and everything. But I think, it's always been rooted in kind of these little games that people don't really consider games.
Oh, you know what? It's actually true that it's a real game. Those are real games, because what's this popular game? I think it's called Love Nikki. Those games are getting really popular already on mobile.
Yeah.
They're super popular, and they're definitely games, because people, I think you also have to compete when you dress up. So yeah, whoever is watching this and plays those games, those are definitely games. Don't let anyone tell you they're not. What do you think we can do as Prosarium.net? What would you like to see us do?
So far, I've enjoyed everything that you guys have done, and I think like these video interviews are going to be a fun new thing for everybody to experience, and I'm looking forward to seeing the rest of them. And I think, you know, as you gain more supporters on Patreon and everything, that the next coolest thing that I think you guys could do is to kind of run your own game jam. You know, like create games under Prosarium, games created by African women in gaming that we can all share and like hype up, and we can all like meet each other and just see where our skills lie. You know, kind of like a networking opportunity, but also an opportunity for people to build their portfolios and get discovered.
I'm actually glad you mentioned that, because we're actually sponsoring and partnering with a game jam that's coming up in Zambia. It's actually part of Women Game Jam, which started in Latin America, and we're the first site from Zambia. We're the first African site to take part in Women Game Jam, and it's happening in August. And I am also really excited to see what people come up with. So yeah, that's something which we're doing now, and I'm also hoping that we'll be able to do more of those in the future, because we actually wouldn't be able to have sponsored it without our patrons. So yeah, for the patrons watching, thank you so much for helping us sponsor Women Game Jam Zambia, which is coming up really soon. Do you have any words of wisdom before we close this? Anything you
Always
want to say?
save every 15 minutes is my biggest word of wisdom. You never know when it's going to crash.
Yeah. Do you have a specific experience that caused you to say that?
Just there was one school assignment where I designed an entire level in Unity, and I didn't hit save for like a little bit of time. Like it was quite a bit of time, and then my laptop crashed, and I opened it and it's gone. And that was just one of the most heartbreaking moments of my life, because I'd spent like 2 hours on that, and I was like, oh my goodness, I need to. Wow. And you know, you just have to like kind of shut your laptop, go take a nap, and come back to it later, because it's completely heartbreaking. So always remember to save.
That does sound heartbreaking, and I hope you listen. Anyone watching this, please listen. Save your work every 15 minutes. And yeah, so that's it for our interview. It was so great talking to you, Sunny.
It was great talking to you too.
Yeah, oh my gosh, yeah, this was so great. And also thank you to our patrons who are making these video interviews happen. Yeah, so yeah, we have to say bye now. So bye, Sunny.
Bye.